Hello everybody. So I've been missing creating resin sculptures, and so I was inspired to do one that looks like a river. So this is the resin that I used, of course, part A and part B. And I actually end up doing this 3 times. Mostly the same method each time, but with small changes that made a big difference. So this is my first attempt, and if you saw my short video that I posted the other day, this is where that came from. So I have 16 ounces of the mixed resin, and I'm partitioning it into, some cups have about 2 ounces in them. Most cups have about 2 ounces in them. And in this first cup, I am putting, this is the first time I'm using these acrylic gems, and it's a mixture of sizes. In the large container, I'm putting a mixture of small and large river rocks. I got these from Michael's, but you could certainly use rocks that you find anywhere. I would just recommend washing them first. So when I put that white resin dye into the clear resin with the acrylic gems, that's where I made my first mistake. I put way too much white in there. I knew better. I don't know what I was thinking, other than I was just excited, I guess. The greenish resin off to the right at this point was from alcohol, and then the darker blue resin was with navy alcohol ink, and the other shade that I just mixed was made with a resin dye. Oh, sorry, a resin. Yeah, I guess it's a resin dye. Different than alcohol ink, much more concentrated, and it was called indigo. So I am making sure everything's level. I'm using my trusty old pizza pan with my shower curtain liner. This is the same shower curtain liner that I used months ago for my other resin sculpture, and I just saved it. So here's where I made my second mistake. I put the rocks around the edge first. I should have waited and put the rocks around the edge last, and I will eventually explain why. But again, this was attempt number 1, and you learn from your mistakes. So I will show you this process 2 more times. But I knew I wanted, or needed really, the darkest color in the middle. And then I did the greenish turquoise after that, and then closest to the edge I did the lighter blue. I think my pizza pan is warped, so to keep it from running all to one side, I just used a popsicle stick to prop up the one side. Nothing super scientific. And by the way, this video, for the most part, is sped up at 5 times the speed. There are a few times where I slow it down a little bit, and then there are some times where I speed it up a heck of a lot. So this was really fun, though. I learned a lot. I absolutely love the colors. And I just love watching how it forms around the mold. Once it's semi-cured, though, of course. So I had a little bit of clear left over. Put that in the middle, and spritzing with alcohol. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've spritzed with alcohol quite a few times. That really helped to get rid of the majority of the air bubbles. I don't believe I had to do the heat gun or the torch much. Well, here I go. Okay, so here's the heat gun. The only purpose here is to get rid of any potential air bubbles. So I was just using a paper towel with some alcohol spritzed on it to clean up any edges because I didn't want any sort of messy edge to mess up the sculpture. So spritzing with alcohol, covering with the food net. Oops, false alarm. I wanted to give you a nice close-up. So here's part of that, or mostly all of that, short that I posted the other day. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Chef mate. So it really was a guess as to how long this needed to sit. So I believe I did 2 hours. I'm actually inside, so I knew the temperature was in the like mid to upper 60s. Of course, a lot of this depends on the humidity, which I don't know the humidity level, but I knew that I wanted it to drip, so I was ready. Got my bowl with my vase all ready to go. The problem is it started to drip, and again, this is sped up about 5 times, but I could see that it was dripping fast, and the rocks started to just pour off. And so I made a split-second decision to put it right back on that pizza pan and do my best to save it. So just tucking the rocks back in. Very, very, very sticky. Thank goodness for gloves, and thank goodness for alcohol spray. Alcohol spray will get rid of any sticky resin residue. So the rocks that had fallen off, I put back onto the tray. And then I let it sit for, I believe, another hour. All right, and so it's definitely still soft. I still wanted drips. And so I went ahead and put it back on. Coming in with the heat gun just to encourage a little bit of movement. So I propped a giant food net up and let it go. This is after maybe an hour or so. Definitely getting some drips. You can see the whoop, rocks are tumbling. Resin is dripping. But I thought it was still really pretty. I really liked the striping of the blue with the white. But it's giving me toothpaste vibes. And certainly more like beach, ocean than a river. This is the next day. I let it fully, well, I shouldn't say fully. I let it cure more overnight. And as you can see, it is still soft, but it's not sticky. So as I'm maneuvering it, it's not, I'm not getting fingerprints on it. It's not sticking to anything really. And it came off of the mold very easily. That's why I love that shower curtain liner. So there were lots of unsightly drips and scraggles and stuff, so I just used scissors and kind of trimmed those off while it's still pliable. In hindsight, and I will do this with the second and third sculptures, I prefer to sort of rip the drippy pieces off and only use the scissors if I have to, because the scissors make a, harsh edge. Plus, I'm using large craft scissors. I really should be using smaller scissors, but anyway, so I let that sit to harden up and started the process over again. I believe this is the exact same shower curtain liner. Cleaning it off with isopropyl alcohol and a paper towel, just any resin or residue. So now I am learning from my mistakes, and I am not putting the rocks down first, but I am going to put the darker color in the middle, and then the green / turquoise, and then the light blue around the edges, and then the white. And this time I was very careful not to overdo it with the resin paste. It's not an alcohol ink or anything. It's like a much thicker type of paste, this white resin dye. So the reason I realized that I really should put the rocks on last is I didn't want the colored resin running over top of the rocks if I could help it. And so if I put the rocks down first, then the resin really like flooded those rocks around the edge, if that makes any sense. And so then as the resin drips down, there was just more, I guess, colored resin dripping over top of the rocks. So I was really trying to kind of protect the rocks this way. So we'll see how it turns out. And I don't think I did this the first time either, but I made sure I didn't pour all of the colored resin at one time. So like I started with a little bit of the dark blue, a little bit of the green, a little bit of the light blue, did the white and the rocks. And then I came back in and then filled in the rest of the dark blue, green, light blue. That just helped me to maintain the different areas of the color. So each time I do this sculpture, I use 16 ounces total of resin. And the proportions that I use to separate out the colors and stuff was not perfect, but it's roughly 2 to 3 ounces of each color. I did not need as much of the white as I did the other colors. So I did spritz with alcohol as I went through and then hit it with that heat gun. Here's the close-up. It looks similar to the first one. Certainly not as white, but there's that side shot. Nice and clear. Chef mate, check. Covering with a net. And this time, there's a little check-in on the first one. Actually demolding it because I wanted to use the exact same vase for this one. I really like this vase because it has a nice base that is, I believe, hexagonal. Nope. Octagonal. Anyway, I really like this base because it's just really sturdy. And so this, I want to say, was 3 hours. So I wanted to keep the same amount of time, but fixing the white and making sure that the rocks were on top of the resin this time. So that is the main difference. I didn't want the length of time that it cured before I molded to be any different, if I could help it. And we have drip off. I knew that, I don't know, some of the rocks would fall off. I knew that. I was expecting that. I just didn't know how many to expect. So clearly this is sped way up, but I wanted to keep the camera running so you could watch it drip. And so here's a close-up after, I don't know, an hour or so. Awesome. It almost reminded me of a glacier. Some of those blues that are in there. And it was like some of those rocks that were kind of tumbling off. I don't know, they just had a little personality to them. So not as much toothpaste vibes this time. Cover it with a net, let it cure overnight. Here it is the next morning. Pretty darn cool. Not what I was going for, still, but pretty cool. It's also giving me octopus. Those acrylic gems, the large ones, were definitely giving me octopus vibes. So now it is time to demold, cleaning up the rocks around the edges that had fallen off. I did keep them. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with them yet, but I don't know. Can you strip resin off of rocks? I don't see why not. I don't see why I couldn't try. So we are going to demold and make sure it doesn't crack or anything. So I know it looks like I'm being really rough with it, but again, this is sped way up. So some of the plastic, the shower curtain liner had gotten into the cracks, and so I had to really kind of finagle it out. But it really wasn't too difficult. I didn't have to rip anything or cut the shower curtain liner, so just took a little bit of elbow grease. Yeah, that really looks like an octopus. So some of the really long drips that had rocks on the end, I knew that those were not sustainable. The resin was too thin and the rocks were too heavy. So I did have to cut some of those really long drips off. And then I tried to round out the edges the best I could. But then I just go through and pull off the straggly bits as much as I could, and then use the scissors where I needed to. So just looking at it from all different angles, I was pretty happy with it. Again, it wasn't what I had in mind, but it wasn't like I was going to throw it away, you know? It was pretty cool. So I decided that I was going to try to make a third one, and that this one here could potentially be an inside piece to the third one. So I went ahead and put that back on the mold, making sure it's nice and tight on there. Set it on top of the bowl because some of the drips were still on the longer side, and so the vase wasn't exactly long enough. So this is my third attempt. Okay, I didn't show pouring it. I did have extra white, so I poured that in its own puddle, and I really was just playing around with that. So I let this sit not for 3 hours, because the last two that sat for 3 hours, those were too drippy. Those were not what I was going for. So this one sat for about 4 hours and 15 minutes. And I know that because I had set a timer for 4 hours, or an alarm really for 4 hours. And I was a little bit late getting back home. So it was a little bit more than 4 hours. And again, this little white piece, I was just having fun with that. All right. So it looks similar, right, to the first two that I did. Although this one, I think I backed off of the white even more. The white resin dye. You can tell the white is not as bright. So the way that I created this one, other than probably backing off on the white a little bit, was the same. I did the rocks last. I did the pouring of the blues and the whites, or white with the acrylic gems. Pretty much the same. The only difference with this third try is the length of time that I let it cure before molding. And so, like I said, most of this video in the so far has been about 5 times speed, some spots 10 times speed. This is 20 times the speed. And look, it's not budging. Or it's barely budging. This, my friends, is what I was going for. So the third time was the charm. I was so happy with this. So happy. So notice I molded it over top of the previous sculpture that I did, the one that dripped a heck of a lot. So that one is sitting directly on the vase, and then this one, of course, has the plastic beneath it, so that there's the plastic layer separating the two. But I think I lost, like, and this was after it sat overnight, so it did drip a little bit more overnight, and I think I only lost a very small handful of rocks, like maybe 5, and I saved them. Like I said, I'm going to try to figure out what to do with them, because they do have some bluish resin on them. So demolding, oh, I was just so happy at this point. I was like, yes, this is what I was going for. And frankly, if I had let it sit for 5 hours, maybe 6 hours, I probably still would have been very happy with it. So see how I'm pulling off any little straggled bits versus using the scissors? I was really trying to refrain from using those just to get a more natural edge. And then putting it back on top. I wasn't sure if I should put it without the plastic or with the plastic, so I decided to put the plastic back on, more as just a barrier, because I didn't want the two pieces to adhere to each other permanently. And it took me a couple tries to figure out exactly what orientation I had the pieces together, because, yeah, the curves and all that kind of stuff, they form, and then you got to put them back together. And I'm not even sure I got it right, but it was good enough. I just pushed down to make sure that it would be flat, because the last thing you want is a sculpture with a curved bottom and then it doesn't sit properly. So let this cure for, I don't know, maybe a half a day or a full day more, and voila. So there's that little white piece that I did just for fun. It reminds me of a veil, a bridal veil. So piece number 1, really pretty, definitely gives me toothpaste vibes. Okay, we're done with that one. Here's the 2 pieces molded together. And I'm curious what you think. Do you like them together like this, or do you like the third one by itself? So I just love it. Love it, love it, love it. Beautiful. It could be a bowl. You can't put food in it, but it could be a bowl for stuff, more rocks, I don't know. Or it's just a gorgeous sculpture. So here are some final shots. And yeah, let me know in the comments. Do you like the two together or do you like this one all by itself? Thank you for watching. I hope you are inspired to create this yourself. And I'll see you next time. Enjoy this peaceful ending. Bye-bye.